can change the world, trapped inside an ordinary girl. She looks just like me, too afraid to dream out loud. And though it's simple, your idea, it won't make sense to everybody. You need courage now if you're gonna persevere. You gotta answer when you're called. So don't be afraid to face the world against all odds. Keep the dream alive, don't let it die. If something deep inside keeps inspiring you to try, don't stop and never give up. Don't ever give up on you. Don't give up. Every victory comes in time. Work today to change tomorrow. It gets easier. Who's to say that you can't fly? Every step you take, you get closer to your destination. You can feel it now. Don't you know you're almost there? Oh, yeah, yeah. Gotta answer when you're called. So don't be afraid to face the world against all odds. Keep the dream alive, don't let it die. If something deep inside keeps inspiring you to try, don't stop and never give up. Don't ever give up on you. Don't give up. Hold the pieces to complete the puzzle. The answer that can solve a mystery. Yeah. The key that can unlock your understanding. It's all inside of you. You have everything you need. So keep the dream alive, don't let it die. If something deep inside keeps inspiring you to try, don't stop and never give up. Don't ever give up on you. Sometimes life can place a stumbling block in your way, but you gotta keep the faith. Bring what's deep inside your heart, yeah, your heart to the light, and never give up. Don't ever give up on you. No, don't give up. No, 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 no. Don't give up. No, 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 no. Don't give up.
Welcome once again to our first show of the new year to start our third season of The Radical Imagination. I'm your host, Jim Vredos, and I'm a sociologist who's taught at John Jay College for Criminal Justice here in New York. Happy New Year to you all as we carry on the struggle to resist and transform what we know is a profoundly hurt and dysfunctional society into one that does care, is nurturing, respects, and practices radical love toward each and every human being around the world. As our first show of the year, we want to carry on our tradition in which we share a beautiful holiday message from one of the most iconic progressive activists of the last 60 years. The message was sent out by Tom Hayden during the Christmas season of 2013 and is profoundly right on for 2018. And here it is. When Pope Francis is the left wing of the world, I say, God damn it, celebrate Christmas and the risen Jesus. I know Francis has a ways to go on certain issues, but denouncing the fundamentalist obsession with sex and gender is a start. What we often think is lost is found. If the church of the poor is rising, can a party of the poor be far behind? If Latin America is lifting the Pope, is that not good tidings for the immigrant? If the Pope takes the name of Francis, does that not mean that the earth and universe are consecrated? I don't mean to preach to you, brothers and sisters, but it's that time of year when the Spirit is born where least expected. Have courage, gain wisdom, laugh at the powerful, spread love, rant when necessary, raise your fists, organize, and keep Lucifer at bay, or at least out of office. If Francis can be Pope, anything is possible. Tom. On today's show, we have two of the most foremost organizers and activists in New York and around the country who have been fighting for social progress in the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, transsexual, and allied movements. They are Kyan Darashow and Kyra St. James. And among other issues, they've dedicated themselves to the well-being of trans-sex workers. Kyan founded her own organization called GLITS, Gays and Lesbians Living in a Transgender Society. Her goal is to create sustainable living solutions for the LGBTQ community, from international relocation to mediation for justice. Kyra St. James is the executive director of New York Transgender Advocacy Group. And we're so happy to welcome Kyan and Kyra to the Radical Imagination. It's terrific to have you here.
Thank you so much.
And I really
It's a
appreciate
pleasure.
you taking the time from your busy schedule to come here and tell us about your efforts and your movement and how you began these efforts.
So Glitz became a brainchild because I started receiving mail that I thought was false, like Facebook messages from a young lady in Uganda.
How many years ago was this?
This was about 3 years ago.
3 years ago, okay.
And often I get all kinds of crazy messages, but this was pretty direct and precise, and it was newspaper clippings that let me know this was real. I was getting phone calls from her that were kind of frantic, running through the woods. She was being chased, hunted.
Really? Okay.
The Ugandan government outed 50 members, 50 GLBT members of Uganda and of the parliament in Uganda, along with just random sex workers.
I remember those news stories.
She was one of these people. I realized once I got the clippings and seen her actual picture, I had to do something.
So she saw you or saw your blog, right?
She had
Your
just,
website.
She had seen
And
me conversing with a trans leader in Uganda.
I see, got it. Okay.
So she reached out, and you
I
know,
see.
their manners are much different than ours. Every time she addressed me, it was mom. And that just affected my heart. I was led by a mom, and who was Flawless Sabrina, who just passed away. And how ironic that this young woman reached out to me. But being able to, one, figure out at 4 o'clock in the morning this was something very serious.
Emergency.
Yeah, who do I reach out to and how do I have the conversation? The first conversation I had, pretty much the young lady, it was a nurse, that told me, listen, you can't use the term transgender when trying to advocate for her, because they'll kill her. So that took on I had realized at that moment I put her in harm's way.
So there was cultural differences you had to finesse here, and so, okay.
So I really stuck to the format of trainings. I'm able to do that because we often have trainings surrounded around gender identity and building community. Now, if I can get you in America on a training, it's imperative that we get you to asylum. We find a way to keep you here, because clearly going home means the distinction of your life.
So this became an effort now to get her out of Uganda.
Out of Uganda.
Wow.
She went, she actually, it started to happen. And it started to happen very slow, and then it progressed to a crescendo, and she was it was kind of a local trip. It wasn't directly to New York, but she was sent through Germany into London, into Albany, where she called it home. She loved Albany. She liked the quietness. She realized New York City's a bit busy. And afterwards she had come through, she had visualized that place being home. Her name is Aaliyah Adams, fabulous young lady. And immediately sought out, she went from being a sex worker and being hunted to wanting education, and education only.
Which is what you also offer.
Yes.
And give us a little bit of an idea of what that all means.
For me, being a sex worker's advocate and knowing this because I was a sex worker, in order to change the demographic, if people don't want sex work, give us educations. Give us jobs to replace what you don't want. Just don't say, I don't want sex work. Have a solution to the problem. And often, my community, we're chased out of school. We're chased out of colleges. We're not made to feel comfortable, not even entitled to receive an education because of how society sees us. We're no different than the next person, but because we have a gender identity, we're robbed of education. In most cases, I know in my childhood, I couldn't concentrate.
Right.
Because even if a teacher asked me a question, my femininity wouldn't allow me to speak. Because
and at what age was this now?
I identified from kindergarten.
You knew something was going on.
I knew something was different. It didn't have a name. We come from an era where it didn't have a name.
Yeah. Well, let's get Kyara in a little bit on this too here. Wow. So tell us a little about your efforts and when all of this began to, you know, develop in you as well.
Take fruition. Yeah, absolutely. So it started with me, just give you a background on my experience of leading me where I am today. When I first came to New York City in the mid-'90s, there were no laws that protected trans folks.
From where? Where did you come?
I came here from Beaumont, Texas.
Beaumont, Texas,
yes.
Okay.
And I came from Beaumont, Texas. I moved to Atlanta with my partner, and then from there, we moved to New York City.
Are you originally from New York?
I'm originally from Bushwick and Park Slope.
Okay, I'm in New York. Okay, so Beaumont, Texas, and we meet in New York here. All right.
Yes.
So you come up, and you're in New York in the early 90s, mid-90s?
Mid-90s,
okay.
And what I observed and experienced were a lot of violence in so many different capacity ways. And like one of the things I used to always see and used to frustrate me is trans women being beat, right, by police officers, by partners, you know, and what I used to, every now and then I wanted to intervene, and then I would be with girls like, girl, pay it. That's how it is here in New York. Like, just let her learn her lesson, you know, and that led a lot of community members down this journey of getting what we call pumped, where like silicone injections, so that they could look more passable, you know, they can take on the feminine shape of the women that they were familiar with growing up in inner cities. And so
in the hopes that somehow the violence would decrease.
stop.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it was
Not that anything needed to be done, because you were responding to the
absolutely, and that's
oppression.
brutal societal
absolutely.
societal
And there's a term
reaction.
called stealth, like living stealth or passing.
stealth, yeah,
and
passing,
so back then, that was especially important for trans women, especially of color, to live stealth in these inner cities. Because once you were clocked, is a term we use, or spooked, you got the business. You got everybody coming at you from not only
Once you were, in a sense, found,
Identified.
okay.
Identified, yes.
And then focus began to be
violent,
placed.
and it was a negative focus, right? And so it came
What
from
did you make of the people that were responding so violently? What did you think was going on in these people's heads?
In our homes, and
Yeah.
I know for me,
Or families? Yeah.
it started with family. My first real look at discrimination
Right.
was at home. And
From who?
from my parents. So
Right.
they couldn't understand it. I couldn't understand.
Right.
They couldn't wrap their head around my femininity. Surely, as a child, this was stagnant to me.
Did you have any talks with them, beginning
I
talks about what
couldn't.
was, you could? They were
my-
just so adamant and scared, or how did we go wrong, or what was going, what do you think was going on in their
A lot
heads?
of, we didn't raise you to be like this.
It's more of a reflection on them.
Oh yeah, definitely.
that's the issue.
It was the
Right.
macho. We want you to play football. That's not going to work. We want you to go outside and play ball, and that's not going to work. And
Well,
it was
our-
that whole
okay,
macho thing,
Right.
and I was the total opposite of
Right.
that. And Catholic school.
Oh, you went to Catholic
I went
school.
To Catholic school, so that was another. The nuns are allowed to beat you.
Well, what do you
So-
think about Tom's thing, reference to
Oh, I love
the
it.
Pope? Yeah, right.
I
That's
love it.
it's a new
Because
Pope. Yeah.
It actually
But
goes
you didn't
with
ex-
today. We have
absolutely.
we have a devil in the office.
And
Lucifer.
I just want to say, like,
Yeah, go
the
ahead.
Pope, I'm not a fan of the Pope.
No.
And he has said some problematic things.
Absolutely.
As far as trans people should not exist in this world. You know?
Francis.
Yeah, the current Pope, are we talking
Yeah.
about? Yes.
Yeah.
And so I remember in the very beginning when he was elected Pope, I'm like, he seemed to be very liberal. But I know, and this is what happens a lot of times, like folks who we revere can be problematic, right? I'm a great fan of Barack Obama, but I am not a fan of a lot of his politics and,
Yeah,
and
understand.
policies, you know? And so you can revere, like I revere Barack Obama, but am I like a fanatical fan of his? No.
No,
You know,
we got
because-
you. But like Tom was saying, it's somewhat of a start.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And compared to some of the characters we've
it's
had,
a mark.
it's a mark. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where we didn't have a mark.
We didn't have a mark before.
Right.
You know, and I really, one of the things I try to stress with my folks is like getting an understanding of who we were before Judeo-Christianity, before Islam. We've always had a place at the table. We've always been an acceptable part of, an integral part of many communities. And so we need to get back to that belief system of we all have a place at the table and no one's left behind. And what
So you're saying, if I understand, so the Judeo-Christian tradition began to resist that effort, that communal effort.
Absolutely. You know, when you
and
talk about
threw a
the
monkey
indig-
wrench into this.
Absolutely. You talk about
Or at
the
least some
indig-
elements of that. Yeah.
Yeah, some of the indigenous communities here in the Americas, when they first were encountered by the Europeans,
Right.
there was a term it sounds cute until you do background information. Berdache, they were called Berdache. And so Berdache are folks who are two-spirited, some are trans, gender nonconforming folks. So they were called Berdache. And what happened was they broke down a tradition. When I say they, the French, and the French, this was in Canada. So the
Yeah.
French settlers, they broke down that tradition, and what they would do is they would round up all the indigenous two-spirited folks, and they would set them on fire. They would
Break their spirit.
break their
Sort of
spirits.
what they're
They
doing
would
in
send
Uganda.
absolutely.
And sort of what they do in prison.
In
I know we're going to get to
prison.
the penitentiary, to get people to feel penitent
Yes.
and to break that spirit.
Break that spirit.
But it's so funny you say that.
Yeah.
on December 17th, I held an event to end violence against sex workers and the GLBT community. That was on the 17th. On the 18th, late at night, I was attacked.
Yeah, you were talking to me about that. What happened?
I was attacked in my home by someone I know, beat within every inch of my life. It was horrible. I didn't see it coming. There was no warning. Soon as I walked in my door, I was plummeted.
Was this some sort of, do you think there's some sort of connection between the event?
I think it was leading up to the conversations around abuse. I was on the phone with reporters. I was on the phone with the planning committee because I wanted this to be a peaceful event. I also wanted it to be something where people are not walking away damaged or hurt. I wanted to do a vigil, which Kiara led the vigil, and it was beautiful. And that set the precedent to a beautiful celebration of life. And somehow...
But this particular person was present?
No, not at all.
Okay.
But was at my house. His nephew was a part of the celebration.
Okay. I see.
And he just blacked out, got drunk. But what happened was the criminal system, the police, arrested me. Now, my face was all bloody. I requested to change my clothes. They let me change my clothes. I put on a onesie, pajamas. I didn't think I was going to jail, but when I came back downstairs, I ran upstairs, changed real quick. I came back downstairs, still bloody and everything, and I said, I need this man. He yelled out all kinds of homophobic and transphobic slurs. The police did nothing about it. This is considered a hate crime, some of the stuff he was saying.
Tell us in our audience about what the interaction was about, because I think this is important. What did you perceive the police? Were they mocking you? They were just insensitive?
They were terribly insensitive.
How many were up there? And were they?
Oh, there was three police cars.
White,
easy.
black, all male?
All male.
Okay. Hispanic?
Some of them were snickering.
Right, so they didn't take it seriously.
They didn't take it serious, but I didn't have the full picture because I had just gotten beat up, so I'm out of my mind.
And you were attacked suddenly.
And I was attacked. So there was a young man that my roommate had brought home. Thank God my roommate brought this young man, because he would have probably killed me and my roommate. We're not fighters. This little young man was a fighter. Right. And he had to protect me. Wow. Now, I didn't realize how very bad this was until after the cops had arrested me. But this is how misleading the NYPD is. The cops told me in order to arrest me, in order to arrest him, they would have to arrest me, which in my present state, take me. Because I'm going to get out of this.
Yeah,
I'm defending myself in my house.
Absolutely.
Take me. They took me.
But not him?
And didn't take him. Now, 2 years ago, the same young man kicked a white woman in the face in my house, and guess who went to jail? Him.
Yeah. Really interesting.
So the same person, the same precinct would look so different about me that you didn't feel that same man you arrested 2 years ago, if you did your homework and you ran his record, that police station knew that this young man had done this before in the same present state, drunk. Why was his case different from mine? Why was I criminalized, locked up, put behind bars? But here's the special part. I was shackled for almost 18 hours, shackles around my arms, handcuffed to a bench, in a onesie. Where was I going? What was the need for this? I was taken to the courthouse in my onesie, told at 11 o'clock at night that the judge was sick. Normally you would stay in a nice warm courthouse. I was taken back to the precinct, back in the cold, into a cold cell, misgendered, misappropriately talked to. This was by design. Our system is not
to make a lesson, scapegoat of you.
They even said, one of the cops had said, you had been arrested for 9 times. I said, sweetie, for sex work. None of what
Right,
I've
right.
done is battery, trying to hurt anybody, physical harm. Every crime this man has committed has been domestic violence. Why am I in jail? And they wouldn't even answer the questions, but they wouldn't even feed me. So not only am I a prisoner, I'm also an animal.
Less than human.
It made me feel less than. It took me to a place in my head where I felt like a slave. I felt oppressed. I felt beaten, defeated. I felt everything I'm not supposed to feel in 2017.
It's very obvious. I think that's what they wanted you
Yeah.
to feel. And that's that transphobia
Yeah.
that you're also talking about, that your organization's advocating.
Yeah, addressing. No,
Addressing.
Absolutely, because one of the things I always highlight is like these systems are systems that are not broken. They are operating and functioning the way they were designed.
Yeah, they are in a sense successful.
Absolutely,
right.
and
In a
they're
highly
designed to
dysfunctional-
break us and to
Right.
make us, to traumatize us, and to make us feel like this is our lot in life.
You know how many cases of transgender deaths were reported before they were dead? How many cases of domestic violence connected to our community that gotten reports and police did nothing? So here goes the bigger art in their whole delivery is in death. You're not going to let them die with dignity. You're going to misgender them in the newspapers.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
going to further
Yeah.
tear them down in how the media presents their death. It's usually read wrong, it's said wrong, and it's said with no malice and no respect. This person didn't deserve a decent send-off. This is the only way you can do this, is to say goodbye to them and disfigure and disname who they were as a person, regardless of whether you believe in it or not. But this is what the system is doing.
It's a Holocaust. It's an attempt to
It's
discredit.
illegalized.
It's, yeah,
It's
legalized.
illegalized.
System.
Diminish
Memory and everything.
I remember walking back
about a
into the
person.
precinct after I got out of court, and one of the cops, I think he said it to be funny, and said, "Oh, that was fast. This is not a freaking joke. This is my life. I got arrested in my quiet neighborhood where I choose to live hidden.
Yeah.
I live in little suburbia.
you're-
I like not
You're
talking.
trying not to, right. And you were talking about the mid-'90s. Give us a little bit of historical perspective on this in terms of movements. I mean, is that the time when more of the organization, the movements really get started? Was it earlier, and is the response
That was like
to what?
the beginning of like the reinitiation of the movement, because the movement initially got started with Sylvia Rivera and Marsha
No,
P. Johnson,
no.
and well, that period.
Yeah, they
that,
would like to acclaim it too, but the movement started way before those two
Right.
people.
and what,
They were-
give us the years.
I
here
mean,
now.
because there's
1968.
yeah,
68,
and
okay.
even before that, there's
Good
been
year.
like,
Before
especially in Harlem, there's been movements like in what they call the drag ball scene.
The Continental.
Yeah, where in
more
the four-
scattered, right?
Scattered.
Well,
yeah.
here-
So what
Not
I'm
as
so
unified? Okay, go
absolutely.
ahead.
So when I say the movement, what I'm saying is it kind of the spark really got ignited with Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera.
Yeah.
And then that's
You
what
agree on that?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Well,
There's a reason
wait,
why I don't.
Kyra, you tell us your. Okay, so was it there was a name? Okay, so what was the spark? Let's start
the
there.
spark was the Stonewall Club in
Right.
the Village, and so that is something that has been documented. And I just want to say, no, absolutely. Like there's been time, like resilience is part of our human experience.
Right.
So what happened at Stonewall has been documented.
Right.
I had the fortune of knowing Sylvia Rivera the last couple of years before she transitioned. And
So a
so,
little again what that was about.
so that was really
a-
about folks, like marginalized communities being frustrated, like saying, I'm not going to take it anymore.
And this is
Enough
the place
enough.
where they met. It was a
It was a gay bar, because
Gay
there was
bar.
no terms called trans.
Right.
So
Let's make that clear for
Yeah.
the audience here. Because,
Absolutely.
Okay, so it's a gay bar.
it's a gay bar.
And at the foot of the Hudson River there, Christopher Street.
And
Right,
it wasn't really like a fancy bar either, you know.
No.
It was just,
Right.
you know, and it
It
was
was a place to congregate. It was
a
an
place
important-
to find community.
Right.
And what happened was, and this had been going on for quite some time, where the police would come in and check and make sure that the folks had on proper attire, because three pieces of you can break that down what the three pieces are. I can, but you know, like making sure they had on 3 pieces of men attire.
Sort of like the Vice Squads or
Vice
something. I
Squad.
don't know what they were called.
Undercovers.
Undercover, right.
Undercover
Just,
Vice Squad.
Morality, for whatever. They
And-
were under orders to.
Yeah, and what happened was one night they just had enough was enough. You know, maybe it was a little bit too much alcohol.
Right.
You know, and they just had
The
enough
community, yeah.
in the community to
hell
where
out of our
they
place.
lashed out. And
Right.
and sometimes when you corner a frightened animal, they will, you know, they'll lash out. And so it's
Yeah.
the same with any community that has been marginalized. We see this going on currently in Iran right now, right, where communities that have been kind of bottled up.
A lot of the young people. Yeah,
Yes.
enough is enough.
Enough is enough. And so Stonewall was one of several initiations of this movement that led to
Yeah, from a gay bar uprising, if you want to now transgender
the transgender.
So,
movement and right.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to pass?
So
All right.
in
You
the
disagree a
early
little bit.
60s,
Okay,
I
early-
disagree a lot.
fine.
In the
Why
early
not? Okay.
60s,
Early 60s.
Jack Durashow, a.k.a. Flawless Sabrina, that's how I got the name, created the ballroom scene. It started with the Continental Balls. Flawless was arrested over 100 times for not wearing the quote-unquote articles. But Flawless was very smart with the articles. She would take a men's pair of boxers and turn them into a hat. She would keep the sign on it, the fruit of a loom, but she was very creative. And it started out from being a contest to really being a fight. So she would go internationally around the world and convince men, as yourself,
Right.
to become women for a pageant. And that's how the whole ballroom scene started. This kicked open the door to this whole...
more than cross-dressing and...
because it was pageantry.
Pageant.
And that started this movement of girls being okay and wanting,
letting it all out,
letting it all
expressing.
hang out. In Stonewall, there was this kind of security system, so you know if the cops were coming because they would flash a light and people would run in. But there were elders outside of Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera that were way older than them, that were actually the Stonewall movement. Miss Major, Griffin Gracie, received an award last year. I went with her, and she didn't want to walk in the club. We stood in that Uber until she can muster the strength to go in there and curse them people out.
It was just too painful.
It's not only too painful, it was bigger than just these two people. You chose two people that lived quite hellish kind of lives to put on a platform and make them the faces of Stonewall when there were actual elders that are still living today. They're very few.
I think we
of
can
them.
agree with all movements, you know.
Yeah, you have to
there
make
was plenty
somebody
of
the
people
martyr.
also
Right.
that Martin Luther King before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
Right.
But
so I think
it was that night that we finally got her in there
Right.
to tell her truth and to speak her truth. And I thought they were going to get her ovation because she had finally stepped into this place that she had hated. She hated them little statues that they put across the street in that little triangle park. She thought all of that was horrible and disgusting. You put these little white statues in this park to symbolize what? And so, you know, the images of this and then the whole rhetoric behind all of it, and our people are still in jail. We're still being killed. We're still being taken out. In basically, Ms. Major's words, fuck a Stonewall. Because at the end of the day, we're still fighting for our existence in humanity. And this is not just in New York. This is globally.
Absolutely. We're seeing more with your example, Uganda and Muslim world and Asia.
Russia.
Russia.
I went through Russia, and I've never held my breath. I've never wiped makeup off ever in the airport, but a little Asian boy told me, before you get off this plane, go take it off.
Wow.
And I was like, are you serious? And he said, please, I'm trying to save your life. And I really thought, but I could see the looks on people's faces. They wouldn't even tell me where to go to get the next plane. It was the most uncomfortable ride I'd ever been on in my life. And I realized, oh my God, this is real.
I think it's an incredibly important point that this is an international movement. This is an international concern. It's not just Beaumont, Texas, or
No.
Kansas. It's all over.
It's all over. It's global.
And it's
Absolutely.
people like Kiera and Miss Major, and I'm not partnered with a lot of people, but with NITAG, I found a solution in development, in community outreach.
And when you say you're not partnering with a lot of people or organizations, why is that? Do you find a necessity now not to do that, or would you think it would be important for
to
different groups
maintain
to
our sanity?
reconcile?
To maintain,
First and foremost, you have to what?
you have to preserve yourself. You can't do this work, and I'm learning it because I've got my ass kicked so many times
Right.
by community. You have to pick and choose, and you have to do that throughout every aspect of your life. But definitely when trying to help a community, you have to find the right community members to do this work with. Otherwise, it's a crash and burn. If you have toxic people on your plate, you're just eating a whole lot of poison.
So you need some core support.
The
Where you
core
can go in and then teach.
So we can figure it out together, and
right.
we can take this model out into the public. We're a damaged community, so we can't expect society to really be a part of fixing us. We have to be a part of fixing us so we could tell community what we need. We have to, in order to do something about NYPD, we need to set the precedence and demand.
You agree with that, Kayar?
Absolutely,
That sort of strategy?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Making there's what I call like getting community to aspire to be something greater than what they know themselves to be today, and that's where
I would
we
think
are.
the first thing is just literally physical safety, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You got to
absolutely.
make people safe
Yeah.
and secure, and then work with that.
And it starts in the schools. It starts at home. These are lessons that need to be.
What would you like the public schools to be offering?
I used to live across
And
the
is there
street from a high
anything
school.
going on
Yes.
that you could tell us about and that would be positive? Are there programs that are
There are
now being-
programs.
Okay.
There's
Yeah.
so much going on.
There's absolutely there is
Okay,
what
good.
just currently recently here in New York City there's a case that got a lot of visibility. A young not a trans person but a young queer person by the name of Abel Cedino. He was locked up because he defended himself. Unfortunately, in defending himself, he killed one of the bullies that had been bullying him for quite some
That
time.
young man will never be the same again.
Right, and so we have been like we've rallied behind this young man. He's actually gotten bail recently, as of I think it was November.
Yeah.
He got bailed. But there's a law that has been on the books since 2011. I want to say it's called DACA, Defense
Right.
for All Students, and that law is an anti-bullying law. So what it speaks to is the fact that we can create laws, we can implement laws, but if we are not policing and making sure that that the
Goes
the
deeper.
That
It
the
goes
students
deeper.
are held
Yeah.
accountable.
students are held accountable,
The teachers are
parents,
held
There'll be some-
accountable.
Absolutely.
The parents are held
it's a
accountable.
community.
Yeah.
You know,
And transformation of attitudes and values.
absolutely.
And build alliances.
Yes.
One of the things that shocked me about John Jay is the queer GLBT alliance, how they don't want this in John Jay.
Tell me why and what's going on there.
Well, it's a Catholic organization. So a GLBT alliance is really, as far as that, I just heard this as I was walking out of the school. Oh, by the way, do you know we can't have and I'm like, what? A college? This is not acceptable. It's not acceptable.
Wait. Explain this now. Here, there's an
So
organization.
they want to
What's going
form
on?
an alliance,
They
a
want-
student body for the GLBT, which I think would be fabulous.
Which does not exist.
It doesn't. Well, they're trying. They're fighting
trying,
for
but
it.
It's now it's not there. Okay, so
Yeah.
they're organizing
They're trying to
requesting,
organize, and
okay.
they're being denied
by administration
by administration.
under the what?
The Catholic. It's a Catholic college.
wait
or
now.
it's a religious college.
John Jay?
Yeah.
Oh,
Is it
it's a
John Jay? Yeah, I think it's John Jay.
Well, wait a minute now.
John
This
Jay.
is part of the CUNY system, as far as I know. Pope Francis is not Catholic, but
Well,
but
some
there is
kinda-
narrow-minded administration there. But I mean, well, this shouldn't happen
It
because
should happen. It should be a part of all curriculum.
well, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
That the resistance to the organization shouldn't happen.
It
we gotta
should,
we gotta
but
talk about.
we have
changing
high
that.
schools that
Right.
are just as mean. They don't want it because they don't want to identify that this is an area that needs to be tackled. I don't know why I was born this way, but I know I need to be protected. The same way your cisgender child needs to be protected
Absolutely,
in
yeah.
school.
Every child.
Every child
precious.
deserves to have a life and to grow and to prosper, but that's not what happens.
Remember, so from the beginning, did you have family resistance as well?
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons why I left Beaumont, Texas, and
Oh yeah, okay.
and moved to Atlanta. I thought Atlanta would be a safer place for me because I saw more people who looked like me.
Was
but
it? Somewhat?
Somewhat, but at the same time, you know, when we talk about these systems, right? Religion plays a big role in the African American
you said that.
community, and so
Tell us about that.
So,
Yeah,
so a lot of
okay.
times, the very people who are being condemned are using the scripture to condemn
Right.
other folks of their community. So Atlanta is one of those cities where the condemned are also using the very same scriptures to condemn other folks. And I realized, like, I'm over this. I'm over this religion playing such a big role in my life, you know, and so
Your folks were pretty religious?
I grew up Church of God in Christ, Kojic. So that is
Say it again, now, what?
Kojic,
Church of God.
Church of
Okay,
God in
because
Christ. It's
Which is a little radical.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm
so
a
they're very,
secular
they're very,
Jew, so I haven't
So
heard that.
they're very radical, very laying of hands, and they take
wow, yeah.
the scriptures verbatim. And so I grew up in that environment that it hindered me. You know, I've always had esteem issues because of that. You know, coming from communities where gender policing goes on, and in the African American community, I would say gender policing goes on a lot. From the time that you're 5 years old, and they see
When you identify
they see
different,
that the way your mannerisms are feminine.
Yeah.
There's something wrong with that child. You need to
So-
and so you hear that from older adults in your
you
family.
hear from the ministers.
The ministers and the entertainers.
And-
we were
Yeah.
talking a little before, Dave Chappelle,
Yeah.
who okay, funny guy and a lot of different, but here, very hurtful, right? To your
Very
community?
Very hurtful,
How
very...
so? What would you say to him?
have a child that is queer friendly or identify. Have a child, and let's see if the jokes are still the same. You can be funny. You could be hell of hilarious.
Right.
Don't do it to the point where it might hurt somebody.
To the point, right? So
And it's not
Well,
only him. It's,
right,
it's
of
other
course not.
comedians
Others.
that think,
easy targets.
think it may be an easier sell to discriminate or sell jokes as discrimination. It's not okay.
It's not okay, and it's not okay for these social media platforms that they're
Here's
using
these same
to do
men,
that.
Yeah,
and
let's get back to that. That's important.
it's a shock because these same comedians see lesbianism as an oddity. It's something they like.
Yes.
It's something you often hear these comedians, I would love to see them two women make out. So it's okay in that content. But to be transgender, it becomes the jokes and it becomes the actual hate.
And again, we've got to all look at what is this instilling? What is this doing to the people who are responding? It's their issues.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to also throw out someone we hope to eventually get on the show here, but we've had many of his allies and Poverty Initiative and Cairo Center, Reverend William Barber. I don't know if you know about the new Poor People's Campaign. What do you think? I mean,
From Alabama, right?
Yeah.
North Carolina.
North Carolina.
But in terms of the inclusiveness, I know he's spoken out over and over again, transgender rights and so on.
Yeah.
Do you are familiar? You're both familiar with what he's trying. Is that because you mentioned the? Well, go ahead. What was that sigh about there? Tell us,
Because
and then
there's so many people are ready to jump on.
What?
I always look for the motive behind someone either taking up for us,
Well,
and what that means, and are you in this for the long haul? Is this just your 10
believe
minutes?
he is. I believe he is.
Is
I know
it-
he is.
Yeah.
Well, in my
Is it just your 10 minutes of fame?
Right.
Or is it you really, really mean you have us at heart?
So he hasn't won. That's valid. He hasn't won you over. But the sort of theology, the prophetic tradition that he speaks, it comes from Cornel West and Michelle and others. Does that strike a chord? Is that something that you would have liked to have seen in your own religious? Yeah.
Probably when I was younger.
But now you're sort of.
I'm in a space in my life where like it's about spirituality. I'm very spiritual. I'm not religious. There's a difference.
You challenge what?
I go to church.
Okay. All right.
I pick and choose what day I want to go, and
Where do you go? Which
I
churches?
go all over.
Different churches,
Actually,
really?
the last church I went in, I gave a donation, a huge one.
Yeah.
And I've known the minister for about 20 years, and of course, I was beautiful. I had cameras with me and everything.
Okay.
And at the end of the service, she went off. When I say off, she literally called me out. Let me tell you, there are people in here dressed other than themselves. It was really disgusting.
Really?
The last time I went back there, you will never get another $1 from me. It's been real.
And that does exist. And I will say, like, I'm spiritual. I do go to church from time to time. It's been a minute. But one of the churches I do love going to is a very affirming church, River of Living Water, under the auspices of the amazing Vanessa Brown, Pastor Brown.
Okay.
And so what I love about that congregation is that they are very affirming and they accept you as you are, come as you are. So there are affirming black churches that exist within the 5 boroughs, and so I think it's also important to highlight those churches that do, because unfortunately there's more churches like the ones you've experienced where.
I went into my grandmother's funeral and I was terrified. I was terrified. I also was the best dressed lady in church. I also got words I've never heard from my father, who is still today transphobic and very bitter and evil about it.
And
but he said,
you talking? You talk to each other? No.
He said, I'm very proud of you. You really presented yourself well.
Wait, that was from your father?
Yeah.
Okay.
Never in the history of my life that I ever thought I would hear
Small
that.
steps.
Baby steps.
Baby steps. And we all need that.
Yeah.
All of us in this
Absolutely.
society. And
Absolutely.
that's what's so incredibly important, and with a great deal of respect and love do I mention this. I know our audience will appreciate the courage and the integrity that you're having to carry this on, because it does.
It impacts you as
It
an
impacts
adult.
us all. It helps us all
Yeah.
to overcome. That's
Absolutely,
why,
absolutely. And I just wanted, because to touch, you know her as well. I'm not going to say her name. She lives in Bethesda now, but like I've always had these conversations with her because I haven't always been on this trajectory of affirming spirituality.
You were angry, right?
I was angry.
yeah.
I got these systems created to make me angry, and so I used to. I have conversations with her. At the last one was Christmas. I spent Christmas with her, and I asked her, I'm like, do you think the fact that you had a supportive, affirming family helped change your trajectory? Because she's someone that her family encouraged to go to school, stay in school, go to university. She graduated from Columbia, and she comes from an African American family from the Midwest, and she said, absolutely, having a family support, it helps so much, and that's something.
So we've got only about a minute or so. Tell us how to get in touch with you. Other events you're involved
We're
in, and
gonna
so on.
do
So, what are you going to
we're
do?
gonna
Oh,
do-
and we got to talk about your cookbook.
Okay,
You know,
so I have a cookbook called
Cooking and Heal.
Cooking and
And
Heal.
you were going to bring the
And I
cookbook.
forgot.
We're gonna, next
so
time.
we're
okay.
doing a Black History Month event, Valentine's Day, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
You can reach me through glitzinc.org.
Okay, we're going to have this on the credits too. But
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Glitz.
And I'm
Inc.
affiliated with NITAG, SOAR, SWAP USA, SWAP Behind Bars, the Caribbean Equality Project. I'm on the board of 3 of them. And I'm now a proud collaborator with NITAG.
Awesome.
Very busy. Very busy all sound.
Absolutely.
And
you can reach me at kiara@nitag.org. I'm very excited working with Cayenne on the February event. It's Black History Month, so it's called Decolonizing Our Bodies and Minds, and we're going to be addressing a lot of the issues we're talking about
use
here.
your tagline.
terrific. You could use whatever you want, and it's been an honor,
Thank you
and
so
I'm
much.
so happy to have met you both.
Yes.
Take care, and we're gonna
Thank
go
you.
out. We're gonna go out with "Fight the Power." This is Jim Freddos. Thank you so very, very much for watching us here on the Radical Imagination. We'll see you next week on the Radical Imagination.
Fight the power.
Fight the power.
Music hitting your heart, 'cause I know you got a soul. Hey, listen if you're missing, y'all. Swinging while I'm singing. Giving what you're getting. Know what I know in. While the black band's sweating. In the rhythm I'm rolling. Gotta give us what we want. Gotta give us what we need. Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power. Fight the power. Fight the power. We got to fight the powers that be. As the rhythm's designed to bounce with calcium that the rhyme designed to fill your mind. Now that you realize the prize arrives, we got to pump the stuff to make it tough. From the heart, it's a start, a work of art to revolutionize, make a change, something strange. People, we are the same. No, we're not the same, 'cause we don't know the game. What we need is awareness. We can't get careless. You say, what is this? Our beloved, let's get down to business. Mental self-defense of fitness. Don't let the show. You got to go with what you know to make everybody see. In order to fight the powers that be. Fight the power. 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 We got to fight the powers that be. Motherfucking John Wayne. 'Cause I'm black and I'm proud. I'm ready, I'm hyped 'cause I'm amped. Most of my heroes don't appear in no stamp. Sample look back, you look and find nothing but rednecks for 400 years if you check. Don't worry, be happy. Was a #1 jam. Damn, if I said you could slap me right here. Hit it. Now get these parties.